Good morning and welcome to episode 56 of Talking to Artists. So today I'm really excited to talk to Kat Tesla, who's an artist, an abstract artist based in Georgia and Atlanta. Very excited to talk to Kat Tesla, so I think she's joined us.
Hi.
Hi. Let me move
How
my
are
phone so you can see me.
I know I was thinking too, I'm like super close now. It's kind of weird.
It's so great to meet you.
Yeah, it's so funny because I was going through and I'm thinking, I feel like I must have met her before because I've been following you for so long. And I'm like, nope, there's no way.
Well, we have friends in common, so I've heard about you like for a long time in a good way.
I was going to say, oh, maybe that's fine. Yeah, no, and I love your work. And it was just so interesting reading through like your bio and stuff, how, kind of the whole inspiration with nature and stuff like that, which of course is, you've sort of embodied in a way that really resonates with me. But I was fascinated, and I would love to talk about the fact that you started off life as a geneticist.
Yeah.
That is so cool. So tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to tell you I'm a nerd, so that's going to come out in the story.
Oh, I love nerds. I'm surrounded by a family of nerds, so engineers and rocket scientists and such.
Well, I'm just going to take a little sip of tea.
Yeah.
I got up a little late this morning, so I usually have my tea earlier. So anyway, I thought, well, I'll just bring it on the call.
Totally. I usually do that as well, but somehow mine is actually brewing downstairs, so it's going to be like an hour strong tea by the time I get there.
Well, so let's see. Well, I guess I'll just, as a kid, like most kids, I loved art, right? I loved to paint and draw. I loved to sew and I loved to sculpt. I did a lot of clay work in high school. And I also excelled in math and science. And like I said, I was a super nerd in high school. And I did well in art, and I actually was offered a one-year scholarship for the first year of college for art. But we didn't know anybody who was an artist. And
yeah,
I clearly,
well, especially your family aren't they mathematicians and engineers too? So that would be pretty remote.
yes. And so I clearly remember my dad saying something like, well, you've got that first year covered. Good luck. And that really sent me down a 20-year path into a career in science. And so here I am years later in my genetics job. So I ended up I have an undergrad in biology, a master's degree in human genetics, and I specialized in genetic counseling. So that means I saw patients for various reasons. I worked in high-risk obstetrics, where people had a very high chance to have a child with an abnormality, or they had something detected during their pregnancy. And I worked in that area for some time and then kind of jumped around. I actually helped start the cancer genetics clinic at Emory University, where I was on faculty for many years. And I got burnt out from patients, and I went into more of a business role, even though I didn't have a business background. But they thought I was one of the best people to do it. So for a while, I was the marketing director for the genetics lab at Emory. And then I became like the clinical director of the genetic counselors, and then did some research and stuff. So that, it just seems like so long ago. But during my genetics career, I was always painting, sculpting, drawing. I never stopped doing my art. And I remember going to art festivals, the outdoor art festivals with friends. And I kind of wondered, like, could I get into one of those shows? I just, and it just really...
Well, it seems so foreign, right, from where you currently are. Like, it's just to sort of think to make that leap. I can see that would be a bit challenging to think about.
Yeah, and I thought about it for a long time, and I think what happened was I still was of the mindset that I could never be an artist. And my friends and I would go to those outdoor shows, and I just was, it was like a drug. I was so amazed seeing these artists and their work. It was like each one of them had this mini gallery. I was wowed. And,
Mhm.
you know, I saw not one artist, but hundreds doing this. So I think it was then that I knew, yeah, I could be an artist. I could do this. And so it was like this big epiphany. And the following year, I took a course to learn how to make slides of my artwork. That's how nerdy I am. I didn't like hire a photographer. You know, I had to, you know, because I didn't even know you could hire a photographer because I didn't know anything about anything. Took a course to make the slides. I made slides of my work. I submitted to that show, and to my surprise, I got in. I sold almost everything I brought. I won an award, and
Wow.
and a gallery invited me to show with them.
So that must have been, I just want to unpack that a bit, because that must have been so surreal. Like you take this huge leap, which would have taken a lot of courage to kind of go and do the show. And not only could you hold your own, you sell out and you win an award. Like that must have been such amazing affirmation that you'd made that right decision.
Well, I don't know. I think it was blind ignorance, really, Kate, because I know I was pricing my work really low. You know, like I said, I really didn't know what I was doing at all, but I just knew I wanted to do it. So the following week, I negotiated, and at that time, I was the director of the clinicians, and I negotiated a 4-day work week. And so I essentially gave myself a 20% raise, and I had that extra day to work on art because I was curious. I was curious enough. I had to find out, like, you know, could I do something? And so about 4 years went by, and things were happening. You know, I was building up the art business, and I felt like I was ready to quit. At the same time, I was having some medical issues, and I had to have a hysterectomy, which, you know, is a big surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So my plan was that after I returned after that surgery to work, so I had a month off, that maybe 3 or 4 weeks after that, I would quit my genetics job to do my art full time. So I come back to work, and unfortunately, about the same time, my husband was having some medical problems. And the day after I returned to work, he was diagnosed with colon cancer.
Oh, goodness.
So I was 38, he was 41, and it just felt like, you know, the rug was yanked out from under us. At that time, there was no Affordable Care Act. So we couldn't get health insurance because he had to be 5 years cancer free before we could get health insurance privately. Mm-hmm. That meant I had to stay at my job 5 more years because that's where we got our health insurance.
Wow, that must have been really hard when mentally, I'm sure you're checked out, you're ready to move on, you're excited about a new thing. And
yeah, it was
a huge commitment.
Yeah, it was an awful time. For both of us, you know, and he's totally fine now. It was caught early enough, but you know, he was an awful patient. He had all these side effects, and it was just a hard time. And so I remember, you know, calling some of the art festivals that I was supposed to do at that time, and you know, explain to them why I couldn't come to the show. And what really struck me hard was that some of them were so kind, they refunded all my money, while others simply said, "Oh, I hope your husband gets better. You've missed the deadline for a refund."
Oh, how lovely. I guess they're regretting that now.
Yeah, so I mean, that just felt like another smack with a 2x4 from the universe. It was like, what else is going to happen? So
just out of curiosity, because I don't know if you know, but I'm also part of the Artist Network, and we run 3 outdoor art shows. And this is always a challenge where, you know, you have your deadlines and we try and stick to them. But, you know, I have to say we're pretty soft on, you know, helping artists, because the whole thing is about building community. So did you ever go back to any of those shows and reapply, or?
No, the ones
No.
that didn't refund my booth fee, I never went back to.
It leaves kind of a bad taste in your mouth, doesn't it? When you really feel like, okay, this is purely a financial transaction as opposed to a community endeavor that allows artists to share their work with the public.
Right, right. And I don't know if that was the best business decision, but personally it was the best decision for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I couldn't give them money again, just felt awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So during the 5 years, because, so then my husband and I kind of planned that I would quit my job in 5 years. And now he had his own company, but that's not where we got our medical insurance. He did contract work. He kind of did boutique renovations for people, like building wine cellars and, kind of specialty projects. He's like MacGyver. So he's super talented on his own. So 5 years go by. During that 5 years, I kind of got off track, I think. Like when I think about it, I floundered a little bit, changed my work a couple times. I didn't really know what I was doing. I got in a bad gallery contract. I remember a collector ripping me off, giving me a bad check, and I didn't know what to do. And, I started to tell myself, like, I need to figure this out. And so I really dug my heels in, and I started to kind of take notes, watching other artists. What are they doing? What does their booth look like at an outdoor art festival? Who's in a gallery? How do they get in a gallery? I started reading business books and marketing books. And I took courses on body language and negotiation and public speaking. And I was trying to up my game and figure this out in preparation to quit.
That's a pretty I just want to stop there because that's a pretty sophisticated path. Like not just to kind of go, okay, I'm going to take a little class on how to do business. I'm going to do body language and psychology. And I totally am with you there. I'm a huge fan of psychology and kind of reading body language and using that to, I guess, to talk to the clients the way they want to be talked to. But yeah, I just love that. Like, I love that nerdness of you that's kind of like, yeah, I'm not going to just go do it. I'm going to really research the hell out of it first.
It's my nerd side, and it's just something that's always been with me, I guess. I remember when I was working in genetics, this is just a sidebar, but I was on different committees and had a zillion meetings and things I had to do throughout my career. And I was working with our computer guys on something for content, I think, development for our genetics website at the time. And they, after meeting with me for a few times, they sent me this questionnaire, and it was a nerd scale. And because they said, we just want to know, how you'll score. Well, needless to say, I scored pretty high.
Congratulations.
and they were like, we knew it. So anyway,
I think it's fascinating though. I love my family also are like, my father's an engineer, but his mother's an artist, so I got that too, duality. And my daughter is she works at Canada Space Agency with a mechanical engineering degree, but she also has that real creative bent. And I think that's a very misunderstood but very powerful combination of that kind of nerd and creative together, which is really where innovation comes from, I think.
Yeah, I agree totally. I mean, I have to say the scientists I work with in genetics, although nerdy, sorry for my friends that are watching from Emory and the CDC, but they're brainiacs, but they're also really creative. I mean, yeah. You have to strategize and figure out, I've worked with some geneticists who made seminal discoveries, and yeah,
you don't do that by not being creative. Like, that's where
right.
That innovative thought and nonlinear thinking comes from, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So after you had like 5 years of, sounds like pretty hellish, health issues and being in a job that you're not necessarily feeling committed and passionate about anymore, and then these gallery that rips you off and stuff like that, how did you kind of, I guess, pull yourselves up and find that resilience to kind of go, I still want to follow my dream?
Well, I looked at the clock ticking. So I looked at that 5-year period of time as like, I have 5 years to figure this out and pull it together. And, I was doing shows, and I whittled down my schedule to exactly half time in genetics. And I negotiated a great deal with my supervisor at the time. And actually only had to go in a day a week for some of those 5 years. I was finishing up a research project, but, so I was bound and determined to quit after that 5 years, and I did. But I was so busy. I had built the art part of my life up so much that my husband shortly thereafter closed his business, and he became my business partner and studio assistant, which was like a dream because he's way neater than me. I'm a super messy artist. He is very neat and meticulous. So it's kind of a good combination.
Well, it's wonderful too to be able to have that other skill set. Like I'm honestly just hardly wait till my husband can retire and help me out with some of the stuff that I know he would do much better than I can do, and I don't really want to do it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that first art festival was 24 years ago.
Wow.
So,
well, you've come a long way.
Yeah, there's been a lot that's happened. So, I don't have any regrets that it took longer, to quit my genetics job, because I definitely needed that time to figure out, what the heck I was doing.
So what sort of advice would you give to artists that are kind of in that situation where they're kind of, I'm assuming too, it was a really well-paying job, was a solid job, with probably a pension, and your medical intent to sort of quit that is pretty, it's a big leap. So what would you kind of advise artists that are thinking about that, or how do you actually go about it?
Well, I know I can only, I guess, say some of the things I did. One of the main things my husband and I did was we put a year's worth of salary in a bank account that, like what we could live on for a year in case everything went wrong. And that was our backup fund, and that gave us a lot of confidence. And I think we took more risks because we knew that if something didn't work out, that we weren't going to be living on the streets. So that was a big thing. I wrote a business plan and a marketing plan, and I think that having some kind of plan, it doesn't have to be formal, but you have to kind of have goals and an idea of what the heck you're going to be doing. I think if you just kind of go out there and say, oh, I'm going to do this, you're just going to make a lot of mistakes.
Well, I think what ends up happening too is you end up doing the things that you love to do, like the art part of it, and you never really quite get around to all those really super important things that are not necessarily as much fun. Yeah, I agree. Like even if it's a one-page business plan of your objectives, your sales revenue targets, like I think that kind of stuff, and I know that a lot of artists kind of go, oh, I don't want to do that. But how do you know if you're on track if you don't have some sort of guide to go by, right?
That's so true. Oh my gosh, Kate, I think that you hit the nail on the head. If you don't have a guide to go by or a goal that you're trying to hit, then there's nothing to kind of measure against. Like you could say, oh, I'm doing great, I just sold a big painting, but so what? It's only one big painting.
And one big painting a month, maybe not enough to cover your mortgage.
Yeah. Right. And
well, I think the other thing, sorry to interrupt, but I think the other thing that I kind of see as well is that it also doesn't push you. Like for those days where you're kind of, do I feel like getting up and talking to that collector when I'm exhausted, or, at an art show, or, do I really feel like going into the studio? And I think that having a target to go to, and I always believe you should have sort of a stretch target that you kind of at the beginning of the year, you go, oh, I don't know if I can hit that. But I think it does galvanize you and push you sometimes when you need a bit of a push. Like I know for me, sometimes I get lazy, right? And I'm like, oh, I'd really rather be outside, in my garden reading,
Exactly. Yeah, I think you have to stay on track. And I kind of, I've had friends who, where I shared a studio. I was in like a building of artists, and where some of the artists would come in, and to myself, I kind of call them afternoon painters. It's because they'd come in for a couple hours in the afternoon. And then I'd always hear them complain, well, I don't know why a gallery doesn't want to work with me, or I don't know why this person wants this commission so fast, and I don't know why, you know, on and on and on.
Yeah.
You know, I think about, like, you know, when I was on faculty at Emory, you know, when you're on faculty, you're expected to work a minimum of 60 hours a week. If you're a researcher or a physician, it's much higher. And, you know, I put in a lot of good years for that. And I feel like if I can do it for somebody else, why wouldn't I do it for myself?
Yeah, well, it's a discipline, right? And I think, you know, like, I hate to say it, but I totally agree with you. And I think a lot of artists are pretty kind of self-indulgent. Like, there's not many careers where you're like, I think I'm going to go into work for a couple of hours. You know, I mean, it'd be great, but it doesn't happen that way. And, you know, I think you're right. Then there's the challenge of not having enough work, which I shouldn't really complain about because I've always seemed to be in that situation. But, you know, but not having enough, or not following up on those leads, or, you know, not really approaching it like a commitment and a discipline that's required to be successful.
Right, right. And I think, you know, you have to kind of decide what you want your life to look like. And of course, you don't want to be, you know, working, you know, 24/7, 7 days a week. There has to be some balance. But, you know, I think if you decide to be an artist, the best part is you're master of your domain. You can work as hard as you want or not. And, you know, you get to decide. But I see a lot of talented artists who could be, I think, doing much better if they just kind of maybe got some education or up their game a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I have to say that I was looking at your website. I was very, very impressed with your press kit because, you know, it's coming from a marketing background and myself, I'm like, ooh, I think I might scam that and use that as some reference. I think yours is, I've only ever seen a press kit on your website. I've never seen it on anyone else. Oops, sorry.
Oh, well,
Thank
you. I appreciate that. I have to give that idea, I have to give that idea credit to Julie Schumer, who, as you probably know, her and I teach some courses together. And
yeah.
She had a press kit, and I was like, I think I'm going to need to get a press kit.
Yeah.
You know, I had the same reaction. I thought it was really slick and impressive, and just made a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, I think again it comes back down to looking at the art as the business, and that you know, you have to market yourself and you have to have that consistent look and feel with everything you're doing, and I think your stuff's beautiful that way. So let's talk about the work, because I love your work and I love watching your videos of you painting, and I really loved it even more when I kind of, you know, when reading a little bit more about kind of that sort of the nature and the connection with kind of the divine, I guess the divine creative, I guess, piece that's in all of us. And you obviously worded it way better than I just did. But maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, well, you know, I was a tomboy as a kid. I just loved being outside. I still love being outside. I really prefer being outside more to being inside. And so, I don't know, I think as I got into my genetics career and I started to get burnt out from seeing patients and having to deliver bad news and things like that, I got into yoga and meditation, and I really, you know, found solace in nature. I really found that, you know, hiking and, you know, I had to find ways to kind of de-stress and keep my balance and be able to paint even after a really stressful day at my day job.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was kind of a natural progression that nature, like many artists, would be my muse. So I don't know. I think in nature there's so many interesting patterns and colors and light and dark. It's like all the things that make a good painting are right outside.
Yeah. It also gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility and freedom, I find, because, you know, nature never says those colors don't go together, or those shapes don't go together. You know, I mean, it gives you really pretty much carte blanche to do whatever you want to do, which I always find is kind of fun too. And then also kind of capturing that serendipity of things that are unexpectedly patterned or connected.
Right, right. So, you know, I think that nature served as a jumping off point. My early work was mostly landscape paintings and then kind of became waterscape paintings. And I had dabbled in abstract along the way, but I don't know why I couldn't commit. I think it was fear. I had a really big following for my landscape work, and but I was getting tired of it. I painted, you know, thousands of landscape, waterscape paintings, and I was kind of like, okay, I need to do something else. And so my husband and I were on a trip in Europe, and I got super inspired just by the colors and the beauty. It just seemed a little bit different than the States, and everything was blooming, and I took like a zillion photos, and I could start to see in my mind kind of what I now call the chrysalis series. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, you know, I just decided to kind of take pieces of nature and layer them, really the pieces that I like, you know, certain organic shapes and colors. And then it just was kind of this amalgamation of nature. They kind of feel like something, but they're not. they're not a scene or anything.
Yeah, but you totally get that nature inspiration from it, from the lines and the shapes and the colors, and so, which I always think is really lovely. But I can sort of see that it's hard sometimes to make that jump to not having anything representational where people can look at it and kind of go, yep, that's a good painting.
Right, right. And so I was really afraid that my collector base wasn't going to follow me, but they, to my surprise, most of them did. I certainly had a couple of comments like, what happened to you? You know, but that's okay, because I really knew I was on the right path. And that series I started in 2015, and I'm almost to painting number 600.
Wow.
And I'm considering stopping the series at 600. I don't know, I'm talking that over with my husband. we're trying to figure it out. But during the pandemic, I really started painting more just strictly non-objective. The colors and some of the shapes are from nature as well. So I haven't lost my inspiration. But I think during the pandemic, to cope, I just really needed to paint abstractly and kind of get the anxiety out, and, you know, some of the anger from being isolated and just everything that happened, you know.
Yeah, so maybe it's a bit of the catharsis of actually kind of producing the work, and the process becomes more important almost than the final piece.
That's a perfect way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and interestingly, during the pandemic, I sold mostly the new non-objective work. So I don't know if people were just feeling the same thing I was feeling.
I think everyone was, yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm not sure exactly. I feel like I'm in a transition phase a little bit.
It sounds like your chrysalis series, though, just from what you've said, is that kind of like you've sort of transitioned from being a little bit more representational to purely less representational. And so really it's just almost an arbitrary deciding line where you decide, yep, that's chrysalis. And even though it's a continuation of the work, this is you name it something different, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's going to be something just like you described, where I'm going to stop numbering chrysalis paintings and then just, you know, kind of start something fresh and new.
So are they definitely called like chrysalis 742, or like that's the name of them? Oh, that's nice and easy. Yeah. I always struggle with names, and then I realized, oh my God, I think I've named 4 paintings the same name.
Right. So I did almost 600 paintings just with numbers. So it definitely made the naming part easy.
Yeah. How do you remember them though? Like, if I sort of said, can you remember chrysalis 212? Can you remember that?
Some of them I definitely can remember, and some, you know, I have to look at my image files. I mean, I don't know. Some of them I remember because I remember who bought them and what happened or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you remember them when you do them. It's just off the top of your head. Yeah, it's hard. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think you were saying that you're on your bio, you were saying one of your influences was Franz Klein and the sort of the whole automation, automatus,
Automatic.
automat. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness! Wow, I had a hard time with that one. And it kind of feels to me like you're kind of really moving much more towards that now than maybe you were a few years ago.
Yeah, maybe I am. So, yeah, a lot of artists start with an automatic drawing, which is just from the body, where you're not really thinking. It's just kind of an automatic response to the canvas. And often the automatic drawing doesn't make a lot of sense, so it's kind of like an adult doodle.
Yeah,
And Franz Klein and many others, many of his contemporaries, kind of did like what is described as a pouring out, where there's like just a pouring out of layers and colors, and then editing back, later in the process. And so I really find that, and I think, like I said, a lot of artists do this. I can think of many, but I find the process really fun. I love the pouring out part. That appeals to my creative side. That's like the little girl who liked to make mud pies.
well, and
And
sometimes the starting of a piece is hard, right? Like having this, especially some of the big pieces you work on is this huge blank canvas. So it's kind of a nice way, I would think, to sort of just jump in and get rid of the white.
yeah, absolutely. And and then I think the editing part is like more maybe my scientific brain. I don't know. I mean, who knows how we paint anyway? It's
Yeah,
such an intuitive process. It's really kind of hard to
articulate.
dissect all of that. Like, what's really happening? You're making like thousands of tiny decisions. What brush, what color, what kind of mark, and then that dictates the next and the next. But it's all happening so fast. So I think it's
Yeah.
really hard to describe unless you're doing it.
Oh, I agree. I find sometimes when I paint, when I do these shows and you're kind of painting and people are coming in and out, and then you'll have a few people that will watch you for a long period of time, like, why did you put that there? And why did you put that there? And you're like, I kind of feel backed into a corner because I'm like, I can't actually articulate. I just knew it had to be there, right?
Right, right. I mean, it's our instinct, right? And I think what's so cool, I mean, I know a ton of artists now, 24 years later after starting this journey, and everybody is taking like the same tools mostly, but the outcome is so different, so
Yeah.
completely different. I mean, it's exciting. I'm always excited to discover an artist that I've never seen before, because it's like, how did they come up with that? It's
I know.
fascinating, right?
It's amazing. And it sounds like you use a lot of different materials. Like you're not kind of just an abstract or liquid acrylics or something. Like you use a bit of wax and charcoal and everything.
Yeah, I use a lot of different drawing mediums, and then a little bit of oil with kind of a glazing medium, some acrylic, sometimes ink. It's kind of whatever is going to serve me for whatever I'm trying to accomplish. Who knows what that is, but I think there's something just very appealing about working from the gut, working intuitively, and not knowing where you're going. I think I love that part the most. And I would say the opposite was true when I started painting. I had to know.
Because you had the end goal already.
Yeah, I had to know where I was going to land, because I really, was still figuring it all out. And, now I never want to know the ending until the ending comes.
Yeah.
And so it's this exploration, and it's this, I always think of it as like a conversation with the canvas. Like you're putting things on and it's telling you what it needs, or you have to figure that out. I think it's just one of the most interesting things you can, do.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, I think it's also that you after this many years of painting, you just better trust your own instincts of what needs to happen and when it's finished, and what that you're going to get to the right place at the end, even if you don't necessarily know the path to get there.
yeah, Yeah, I think that's a great point. I just like any other artist, I have lots of paintings that I didn't really love the outcome of. Some of those end up being the first ones to sell. Why, I don't know.
Because they've got the right energy.
Yeah.
I really feel it's about the energy of the piece when you're doing it. I do think that gets embodied into the work.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I have some like that too, where I just was feeling like they were like, I was kind of say they're like, hard childbirth or something. It just took forever to get out, And at the end, I'm conflicted as to whether or not I love them or not. But you're right, invariably, those are the ones that sell first.
Yeah, it's always interesting. It'll be the one that I really don't want to show or I don't want to send to a gallery. And my husband will say, oh, this gallery would love that piece. And I'll say, no, they're not. And then, I'll send them other images and they'll sometimes ask for that very one off my website. And it's the one I was kind of hiding at the bottom or something.
I know, I often say I don't really think the artist is the best judge of their own work. Like even when trying to do things like applications and stuff, I always find it's just so helpful to kind of have somebody else's opinion, not because I don't love the work, but it's kind of like you have the personal ones that you really love. And then,
Right.
like you're saying, the ones that you're just not sure of, but I think other people can see them more clearly sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
It is, it can be hard when you're too close to it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then of course, then there's also the other thing too, is that are you sure it's finished? Like I think that's sometimes the challenge with abstract is kind of knowing when it's done. And I know for me, I work fairly quickly, very intuitively as well. But at the last little bit, I kind of sneak up on it because I know, well, especially for my work, because it's on the wood. So once it's down, I can't pull it back. So I don't have that editing ability. And I kind of like that risky challenge, I guess. But I also know I need to sneak up on it at the end.
Yeah, I always try to stop at 90%. I think that, I don't know, an artist told me that long ago, and I think that's really good advice because it's easy to overwork a painting. So if you kind of pump the brakes a little early and let it sit and then look at it a week later, it's usually done.
I was going to say, yeah, so at 100, it's at 90% one week, and then the next week it's at 100%, even though you haven't touched
exactly.
it.
Because it really is just your perspective about when it's done.
Yeah.
And if it feels done, and does it need more? I mean, that's all you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I love how brave you are with your work. Like I just think that you just seem to really kind of go out there and do the work, and I'm just so fascinated by this collaboration you're working on. And partially I'm fascinated because when COVID first hit, I was in my Art Alchemy studio, and Lisa Hickey and I said, okay, we're going to do this COVID collaboration, and I'm going to work on this 48 by 48, leave it in the studio. She's going to come in and she's going to work on it.
Oh, wow.
I love the concept. The actual reality of it I found really stressful because she would do something. I'm like, oh, that's really cool, but I just don't feel like I should cover it up, or I want to be respectful for her mark making. And so we ended up with something that just looked horrible, although we've agreed we're going to resurrect it. So obviously you had much more success in your collaboration.
Well, I think, Lisa Ridgers and I don't know, it just kind of came together. I think it was maybe some luck involved and maybe just some I'm doing this, we don't care kind of.
So did you know her before? Like, is she a friend of yours, or is she just someone you admired? Or
No, she is, we both share a gallery in Chicago, and I would see her work there when I would drop off my new work. And, I'd started following her on Instagram, and she was following me. And I think early in the pandemic, we just started texting about like, oh my God, we're in a pandemic and all of the things that go with that. And then she, asked me would I want to do a collaboration with her. And I was like, yeah, why not? So I think we didn't really know what we were getting into because it was a ton of work. It was a ton of shipping. We shipped tubes of unstretched paintings on canvas probably more than 50 times during the pandemic.
wow.
And, there would be one tube that I was filling, and then another tube would be arriving from her, and my husband would say, that was the thing in the pandemic. The tube's back. And so I was so excited to see, it was like Christmas every time. And you'd open the tube to see like what had she done. It was hard, right? Because you didn't want to cover up the other person's marks. But then sometimes you had to, because it just wasn't, working for you. So it was this real dance around trying to be respectful of the other person's mark making and how they work without, but still putting yourself in there. So, I mean, the first ones the first two were a little tricky. They went back and forth, maybe the most. And then things started rolling really well. Because we started this last April, and we got to December, and I think in our own careers, we each got really busy. We had commissions, we had some galleries were doing, openings by appointment through the pandemic, or maybe they started late last year doing that. And we just were both like, things were cooking in our individual careers, but we still had a lot of paintings in the collaboration to finish. So I remember sending her a painting that I started that was like aqua and a lot of brown, and it was hideous, and she got it, and I think she covered pretty much all of it. And then she sent me one that was red and purple, and I couldn't have that. So I covered most of that. And so we had like 2 or 3 weeks where I think we were both pissed off at what the other person was sending us.
I was just going to say, like, how do you kind of keep your ego a little bit in check? You're like, I love this part of the piece that I did. Now I sent it to Lisa. Now she's covered it all up.
Well, I mean, that happens in real life too, right? You do something and you hate it and you cover it. And so I just, in my mind, thought, okay, all the other paintings so far are coming out. It was really exciting to see how they were coming out. We both liked the results. And I just, had this maybe dumb belief, that it was going to work out. And so interestingly, the paintings that we disliked, that we were kind of had the anger paintings going back and forth, the 2 anger paintings, one of them, the gallery director chose as like the marquee image for the outside of the gallery. So it's a giant, 100-foot banner of this painting on the outside of the gallery of one of those anger paintings.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I think we pulled through, but it just took longer. And, then we shipped everything in March, and the gallery stretched everything, and the show opened the end of April. And then, so Lisa had some health issues, and we couldn't do an actual show opening, and Chicago was still pretty locked down. So I was traveling to Chicago for a show, and she didn't live that far away. So we met up in Chicago last week for the very first time.
Yeah, I saw that on Instagram.
And
they looked great.
And we walked into the gallery together to see our show. So it was really, I don't know, it was so cool to see all of it together, the whole year together. And, about half of the paintings, I didn't see the ending because she had them. She was the last one to work on them, and vice versa. And, to see them stretched and hanging together. So it was, I don't know, it was really exciting. And Lisa, I love you. I hope you're watching. But we just had a blast. We had a great day together. So it was just really special.
Oh, I think that's just wonderful. And so how did you, even more difficult, how did you kind of know when they were finished? Like when you got one from her, for example, did you kind of go, yep, it's done, we don't need to do anything else with it? Or did you talk about it? Or did you kind of make these decisions in isolation?
We sent images back and forth. Like, we would I think we each would get a canvas back. And, there was always a little like you had to do just one more thing or something. You know? And
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I think each of us worked that way where, you know, she would get mine and I'd say, I think this one's done. And then she'd do, you know, two more marks and then she'd say, now it's done.
Yeah, it's like you touched it last, right? Like a kid.
So, and, you know, then we emailed, you know, we messaged each other images and, you know, either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And then we'd offer the other person, we'd say, you know, do you want this back one more pass? So we always gave that choice so that neither of us felt like, you know, it ended.
Like you were at peace with it,
Yeah.
with the final piece, yeah. And so how many pieces in the end were in the show?
We had 24.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
a remarkable endeavor.
Well, so only 12 were ones we both worked on. The other 12, what we did was, and this was actually also very challenging, we did pairs of paintings where like I would paint, let's say a 4x4 painting and send it to Lisa, and she had to paint a companion painting in the same colors so that they could live side by side or like in the same environment. So in the same home or hotel or whatever. And so
That's cool. My sister and I actually, my sister's an artist in Vancouver Island, and so we have a show coming up called My Family Garden, and it partially because of our inspiration of nature, and she's an artist, I'm an artist, my grandmother's an artist. And we're trying to do that as well, but we're finding it a bit more of a challenge, I guess, than you were finding it, because it's like, we finally like, okay, our color palettes are similar, but we use them in such very different ways that we're still working through that, I guess. We have to work through it fast because our show's in September.
well, that is super cool though, that it's in your family, but maybe harder. You know, I mean, you know, if Lisa was like my brother or something, I don't know that it would have worked.
Well, I don't know. In one way, maybe, but I think the other thing is because we're both artists, I think we know how to have that conversation that can be constructively critical without being mean or nasty. Like we have a really good relationship, so we don't come from a place, even as sisters, where we were super nasty or competitive.
Right.
So I think in some ways it's good. She's actually usually the person I send things to if I don't know what to do with this, or I don't know if it's finished or not, and she can kind of give me that instant kind of thought. But
Oh, that sounds amazing, actually.
yeah, it is super fun, and we're really looking forward to doing that. Oh, and the other thing I should tell you, which I think is hilarious, because you did the residency at Chateau Orquebec, and so Orcabo, right? So she and I are doing it together as a joint residency to work on a body of work together in the same place. So we're kind of excited about that. Hopefully next spring, I think. I don't think it looks pretty incredible.
Yeah, you will absolutely love it. Yeah, Chateau Orcabo is this, you know, it's just such an idyllic residency in the French countryside, and everything's beautiful, and they deliver chocolate croissants for breakfast.
Ooh, I'm there.
I couldn't even count how many I ate when I was there. I was having like 3 at breakfast, and I was stuffing them in my pockets for later in the studio because they were homemade. They were outrageous, and so it was so much fun. And then you're going to meet artists from all over the world. It was incredible. So
yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be super fun.
well,
Yeah, I think my issues. Sorry.
Congratulations to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm super psyched to do it with her together on the same body. We've been talking about it for so long, but because we're so far away, it becomes a bit of a challenge. And she works on canvas, but I work on panel, which means that the shipping is just even that much more cumbersome and expensive and stuff. So maybe I need to work on canvas, I guess. That'll be my next thing.
Yeah, you might want to do that. It's going to be quite a bit easier to get your things there and get them back home.
Yeah, you tend to work smaller if you have to ship these ginormous things, but
yeah.
Anyway, I believe it or not, we're actually almost at the end of our interview because I want to make sure I can save this to Instagram. But what's up next for you? Like, do you have other shows coming on, or what's happening?
I have a show with Thomas Dean's Gallery here in Atlanta in September. Gosh, I think it opens around September 10th. And then I have one painting that was accepted into the Marietta Cobb Museum of Art, and that show opens in July.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm excited about that. And it's called Metro Montage. So it's really, it was a call to, they do it every year. I think this is the 21st year, and it's really just regional artists that they jury from. So I've been in it a couple times before, but it's been many years. So I was thrilled to get accepted.
Oh, wow. Amazing. And so I like to end every interview with, if money, time, everything was no option, what would your big hairy ass goal be?
Oh, gosh. Well, let's see. I love art residencies. I would probably create a giant art residency in a beautiful location. Maybe Italy, since France is kind of taken right now by Chateau Orcavo, or Costa Rica or New Zealand or something. And I would make it completely free, and I would cover all the transportation. So the art, everything would be covered. You just send in, not slides, but images of your work. And, and then I would just put groups of artists together to work for months at a time so that they could kind of, I think cross-pollinating and learning from others is so beneficial. So I think that's what I do, have like just a big ass free art residency for everybody.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm there. You tell me where it is, I'll sign up immediately.
Well, I know there would be a massage therapist, like maybe, a couple hundred massage therapists for us.
That'd be great.
Great food, all that.
Yeah, that sounds phenomenal. Well, this has really been fabulous. I've so enjoyed chatting with you, and thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us.
Well, thanks, Kate. It's great to finally meet you. I'm definitely a fan of your Talking to Artists podcast and also your work.
Well, thank you so much. Well, hopefully we'll get to be in the same place one day and do something fun together.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. Okay, well, have a great day.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.